When the chaos of popular culture makes your brain hurt, you really need belief in the form of a transfusion of analysis and humor. It's time for a POPeration. Join hosts Eric and Stacey as they dissect popular culture one bloody organ at a time. It's just what the doctor ordered.
Hello, this is POPeration. I'm Eric.
I'm Stacey, and today we are going to talk about stuff that makes us cry.
Although hopefully we won't cry on the show.
Hopefully we won't make people cry listening to it, unless it's by laughter.
Yes. We laughed so hard because we're that. Yeah, anyway.
All right. So, but anyway, this came up. We were talking the other day about, movies and things we like and all that, and Eric and I realized, and I think we've discussed this before in our long relationship, we realized again that you don't mind movies that make you cry. Or TV shows or whatever. You're fine having entertainment elicit a crying behavior from you.
Yes.
Whereas I absolutely hate it and can get angry. I read the end of books to make sure that the character that I now have a relationship with and am invested in doesn't die. Because if they do at the very end, I'm going to be angry. I will have wasted all that time. So I read them in first so that I am not crying at the end.
So Marley and Me was kind of out for you.
No, it was never. Okay, first of all, anything with animals, I'm out. Don't put it on the cover of your book. Don't put it on your movie poster. Don't put it in the trailer for the television show. Stacy's not watching it if it's going to kill an animal. And chances are, what is it? The dog's life? What is that?
A dog's purpose.
Whatever. Is to die?
Purpose. Well, to die and to be reincarnated and come back again and break its owner's heart over and over and over and over.
My point couldn't be made any more clearer than from A Dog's Purpose. So maybe, yeah.
So anyway. I guess I should be clear. So we're breaking the gender stereotypes a little bit with this. But I guess I will say I don't necessarily enjoy crying, but if something does make me cry, it seems to be evidence that I'm invested somehow in the characters and that I care about them. And so when the roller coaster or whatever the story is, the plot line, rolls around to something that is touching, if I do cry, that does kind of tend to be, wow, I'm really invested in these people. I don't necessarily seek out, I really need to have a good cry, therefore I'm going to sit down and watch something.
And that is really my big problem, is I do have a lot of friends, and I'll be honest with you, they are mostly women who will say, I'm really in the mood for a good cry, I need to go find a chick flick. And they'll either do an oldie but goodie, that'll, which we'll talk about some of those, or they'll see the latest one that's, the Notebook or whatever's up there, and just because they know they're going to cry, or, If I Die, or whatever, all of these movies that are out.
Yeah.
I don't like being manipulated. I don't like salespeople. And I feel like movies that tend to skew, they advertise, and again, The Notebook, I'm not saying it's a bad movie or a bad book. I'm saying it's not a story that appeals to me because I know that it's going to be sappy and I'm going to feel manipulated. And I hate that feeling that I've just bought something that I shouldn't have.
Now, I am with you there, because if I feel like you're just manipulating me and you're just trying to pull my strings and everything is a cliche, I'm not going to cry. And so a lot of the things that when we were preparing for this particular episode and I was thinking about all the things that did make me cry, a lot of things that they have in common is it's unexpected. Like, I didn't expect to cry at blankety blank, and I did. So that was something that, it does come up for me, because if I feel like I'm being manipulated, I'm out. And then I do get angry at you trying to just, fuck with me.
And I will say that there are movies that I've gone to that I didn't expect to have a strong emotion for, that did make me cry or make me, one, and we're not talking about this one later on, but here's one that was unexpected, A League of Their Own. Okay. That was not advertised as a chick flick kind of emotional catnip thing. Yeah. And I really, really enjoyed that movie. It was very funny. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of the good lines went to the man in it, which was Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
But point being, at the end, there was a lot of... I was so invested in those characters, like you were talking about. I appreciate that. I didn't mind the little bit of tears that came.
Sure.
Because it did show me that I was invested. They'd done a good job of storytelling, and I appreciated that. My problem is, frankly, like any of these where, the kids... Somebody's going to die. It's two kids on a poster looking at each other longingly. One of them's going to die. I'm not going to go see that.
Yeah.
Just not gonna, because I know one of them's going to die.
Well, I remember, and I don't remember what the follow-on was, but I remember when that Julia Roberts movie came out, Dying Young. Remember that?
It even had another title.
Yes, right there.
Even where.
Dying Young. Boy, did that sound, welcoming and fun.
Why the hell? Why the hell would I do that?
But I think it was because Ghost had just come out the year before. I think it was actually kind of a follow-on to Ghost. It was like, ooh, tearjerkers are the new thing. So let's take the biggest movie star we've got, Julia Roberts. Let's stick her in just this completely manipulative tearjerker. Never jerked my tear. Didn't jerk one tear out of me, I'll tell you.
I didn't even go see it. If it has the word dying in it, it's like... I don't, and part of it, you mentioned the word cliche, and that's part of my problem, is that it is what is manipulating me is a cliche, and right now, instead of manipulating me into tears, it manipulates me into huge rage.
Okay.
So anyway, but again, there are people that the movies, especially, it's a really good outlet for them to be able to cry. Perhaps they have kids that they don't want to cry in front of, or there's some reason that they don't feel like they have the right to just go and have a good cry on their bed, cuddle up.
Yeah.
So it's a good excuse. You go to the movies, or you read a book, or you watch a show on TV, and you sit there and you weep and you weep and you weep, and you're letting out some stress. I get that. That's not me, and thus I have a different reaction, but I do understand the philosophy around those who do like to go to these movies.
I think I'm like you. If I'm stressed out, I'd rather relieve that through lots and lots of laughter as opposed to lots and lots of tears.
Correct.
But I am appreciative when a movie or a TV show, and we'll talk about both, kind of take us by surprise and get us there. So let's talk about some of the examples that we have of things that do make us cry. You have 3 movie examples. I have 2. So let's have you go first.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I have 2.5, and here's why.
Okay.
The first one is exactly... I was young when it came out. And had I had now, if this movie came out with this title, I would avoid it like the plague.
Okay.
But I didn't know enough to avoid it. And this is one reason why I feel the way I do now. Terms of Endearment.
Oh, okay.
Shirley MacLaine, Deborah Winger. Deborah Winger dies. Spoiler! Deborah Winger dies.
Jack Nicholson, that fun thing on the beach.
Yeah. Okay, I saw this. I went into it. It was Shirley MacLaine. I think I may even have gone to see it with my mother. That was also a mistake. It's a mother-daughter relationship. It's a complicated mother-daughter relationship. And
thorny,
What's fun about me going to see mother, or any woman going to see these mother-daughter relationships, is you sit there going, is my relationship with my mother better or worse than this one? That's literally what my whole movie is.
And
it's the same with ordinary people.
At this point in your life, you're probably also thinking, am I the mother or am I the daughter?
Correct. Yeah. Also, am I a better mother than this woman? At the time, I was like, is my mother better than this person? Am I a better daughter than this person? How would this play out? But you're correct. Now, I do see it the other way. It's like, okay, am I a better mother? And what do my girls think about, is this how I'm perceived kind of thing? Because I felt that way with ordinary people too. But so anyway, so I'm in this movie watching this. I didn't know she was going to die. I didn't know. And then, and not only does she die, it's this long drawn out, and she has these moments with each of her children that is just one more. It's one more. You wring out the hanky. Get ready for the next. Wring out the hanky. Get ready for the next. And then Shirley has her wallpaper chewing. It's...
Won an Oscar for chewing all that wallpaper.
Of course it did. Yeah. But you talk about, cliche after cliche after cliche.
Was it cliche when they were doing it, though?
I think some was, but some was not. I think what they did is they took a lot of things that from earlier movies, but like 15 different movies. Voyager and all those Bette Davis ones and all of that. And they took bits and pieces and put them all in the same movie. So it was overload. It was emotional overload.
Yeah, because I find I can take cliche a little bit easier if I'm watching a black and white film that was made in the 40s, because it just doesn't seem as manipulative.
Right, and I can, I think that is truly true, because you realize that this is the first time, that's the first time, when Charlie Chaplin did stuff, that was the first time it had been done on film. Yeah. So you can't sit there and say, I've seen it 100 times. Well, of course you have. That was 100 years ago. So I agree. And things do need to be put in the time that they were made. And this was the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere around there. So, yeah, there were things that definitely dated it. But again, it's one of those where that was a movie that so impacted me, I don't ever need to see it again. Because I was so distraught.
So Cry Fest, this is an orgy of like ugly crying tears. It was. But it's funny that you say that, because that leads me into my half part. Okay, what's your half?
My half, and this was just going to be a mention, E.T.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Again, not advertised as anything that was going to be sentimental. Of course, we know Steven Spielberg. Okay, sure. So now we know that chances are he's going to put something in there that's sentimental because of who he is.
But I will say, the movie poster for E.T. did have like the alien hand reaching out to touch the human hand. There was this sense of this is going to be a friendship between an alien and a young boy.
And Steven Spielberg loved coming of age.
Yeah.
Probably still does. Yeah. But yeah, he still does. But that was a big thing. And this was definitely a boy coming of age movie kind of thing. I went to E.T. I was a camp counselor, a summer camp counselor. And we took the camp, it was a girls' camp, and we took them to the movie. Now, I need to put this in perspective for you.
Okay.
It was a Southern Baptist summer camp.
Okay.
This is important. Southern Baptists are Christian.
Yes.
Jesus is important to them.
Got that.
He's a big deal. So
understood.
Okay. I am there. I have been at this summer camp all summer, and I was a counselor, but still went to any of the Bible studies and stuff that was going on. So we go to CET, and it's fine until the guys in the suits come in, because they find him and they're looking at him and they're going to dissect him, and he's going to be this martyr.
Yeah.
And suddenly...
And then he dies and gets resurrected.
Well, the dying part is what got me, but that's where I was... Suddenly, it was E.T. and Jesus.
Sure.
And that's where I ugly cried and sobbed. The credits rolled. I am that. Okay? The credits are rolling. I'm like 18, 19.
Okay.
Credits are rolling. The girls are all being herded out. I'm still in my seat. I'm doing that. I clearly remember this. Yep. And I have snot and tears all over my face. And and the girls are looking at me weird. What is going on with the lifeguard? And I remember that so long ago. But it was one of those where it was also a lesson for me to kind of, this is going to sound weird. I gird my loins a little bit. I guard myself a little bit if I'm thinking that it might be sentimental, but I'm going to see it anyway. Because normally, if I think it's going to be sentimental, I'm out. But this was part of the reason is I sat there like a complete freak, sobbing. You don't understand, racking sobs. I don't know how to describe it. It was the most bizarre thing, and everybody was looking at me, and the lights are up, and everybody's walking, but I can't leave the seat because I can't stop crying.
Wow.
Because E.T. was Jesus. Okay, so that's my story about E.T. and why it's only a half, though.
And Spielberg's Jewish, right? That's just throwing that out there.
I'm fairly sure it probably never entered his mind.
Oh, it had to. I mean, a death and resurrection plotline. You've got to go there a little bit.
That's true. But Jesus was Jewish, so it all works.
Well, true. Okay.
And maybe E.T. was too. We don't know. We don't know these things. So here's the deal. That's why that's my half story there, and that I don't enjoy making a spectacle of myself. So if someone's going to manipulate me into doing that, I'd rather do it in the privacy of my own home, but I'd rather not do it at all. Thank you very much.
All right.
So that's where I am there. And then I have another one. Almost virtually anything by Pixar is first. I'm going to put that. But Toy Story 2 really tore me up.
Okay.
Toy Story 1 was great. And we've talked about sequel. It sets up Toy Story 2. Yeah. Which was it hit all the right buttons. And I was okay with it, though, because, again, it was advertised. It's a kid's movie, and it's going to have fun. And it did. It had a lot of fun. Yep. A lot of funny things. Great characterizations. Of course, the actors, the voiceovers were wonderful. Yep. Everything was spot on. And then at the same time, you had this, as you said, unexpected, Jessie, that whole storyline. Yeah. And then at the end, it was just I thought it was an amazing piece of storytelling. And I was okay with it because, again, I think the difference between Terms of Endearment and Toy Story 2, aside from the obvious ones.
One's about a
Don't
cowboy
write in
and
about
an alien.
This. Oh, my God.
And a talking horse.
Don't write in about this. Is that one, I think, was clearly manipulative, and the other one was not. And the reason I saw Terms of Endearment, which is the same reason I didn't see If I Fall or whatever that is, and The Notebook and any of those, is because I was too young at the time to know that it was manipulative and it was going to do that to me. Toy Story 2 gave me everything that I love, and then it also did the little sentimentality. But it goes again, like what I was talking about, A League of Their Own, in that wasn't the point of it. It just proved that we've done a good job storytelling because we were able to affect it.
And A League of Their Own had to end the way that it did because the Women's Baseball League broke up. The war was over, and basically they sent the girls home.
Correct. But what was also, I'll tell you what also kept me crying on the end of that, even though this isn't the story, what we were talking about in the podcast, was that then she goes to the reunion. And there's all of these older women playing this game that they loved so much. And that was also very touching as well. Yeah. So, yeah.
So the two that I picked, when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today under the heading Stuff That Makes Us Cry, were the movies that always make me cry. Like, I've seen them multiple times, and every single time I see these two films, I will shed tears.
How many times? Okay. Go ahead and tell me what they are. Then
Sure. So the first one is The Color Purple.
Okay.
Which I've probably seen 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
And
it's a brilliant movie.
It's so good. Spielberg again, coming of age in a lot of ways because
definitely.
Whoopi's character Celie really does kind of come into her own.
No, it's totally coming of age.
Yeah. And what to me is so great about it, it's at the beginning, the very, very beginning of the movie, is this young girl who's been repeatedly raped by her father, has these 2 children by her dad, who she loves very much. They are her children, and they are taken from her. And at the beginning of this, you're just going to be like, oh my God, it's just going to be a movie about this woman suffering for 2.5 hours. So we're starting off...
Which would make me mad, by the way.
Which we're starting off with all of this suffering, and she suffers quite a bit longer after that, too.
Yes,
there's a lot of her suffering in the movie. But the point of the movie is that she eventually, gets a spine and starts to create her own destiny. And spoiler alert, if you have not seen The Color Purple by now, is that at the very end of the movie, her sister, who she also loved very much, who was taken from her in a very violent way, goes to Africa with a missionary family who adopted her 2 children. And it's all a little coincidental, but it doesn't matter because the emotion just kind of overwhelms you. At the very end of the movie, she's reunited with her sister and her 2 children who are now adults. And you're not really expecting it. The movie is not about her quest to find her children. She basically, she probably thinks they're just gone.
Right.
And she's got a whole bunch of other stuff, including an abusive husband that she's got to deal with.
The story was fine had they not. They didn't need to come back.
They didn't need to. They didn't need to. But she needed to.
But it was nice for her.
And we really saw how devastating this loss had been for her whole existence. When the look on Whoopi Goldberg's face, even under all that old age makeup, the fact that this woman did not win an Oscar for that movie is so stupid. But we covered that in our very first show.
And nobody won anything in that. It was.
But, that will always make the tears well up again. And it's just, it's such a perfect capstone to this journey of her coming into herself. And she's really ready to meet them at that point. So that's one. The other one that I've seen way more than 5 times. I've probably seen this film 20 or 30 times, I'm sure. Not a classic work of cinema along the lines of The Color Purple or Casablanca or Citizen Kane or anything like that, but I love it, and it's Steel Magnolias. Steel Magnolias, which I watch over and over again, typically in a room full of gay men. We quote the dialogue as it goes along, and the reason we watch it over again is it's so damn funny.
It's very funny, and I have watched that one more than once, even though the first time it did make me cry. I have watched it again since. I will say because it is funny. Yep. That is what I will watch. It was the entertainment value of the funny part. I no longer cry. A, I know it's coming. Yep. And B, that's probably it. I don't have it.
Well, for me, what made me cry buckets the first time I saw it, A, it was completely unexpected. The writers do a good job of letting you know that the Julia Roberts... So, spoiler, for those of you who have not seen Steel Magnolias, Julia Roberts kicks the bucket at the end of the movie.
It's not like we're talking about new movies.
No, that's true. But, just in case, we have had some feedback about... I like the fact that your show gives me ideas of things that I've never seen that I should watch. So, we're ruining them all for you today.
Spoiler.
But Julia Roberts dies at the end. They do a good job of letting you know at the beginning of the movie that she has an illness and that it's serious because she has an attack at the beginning and everyone kind of,
it's diabetes.
Goes to their battle stations and,
And it's diabetes in the 80s, which is
could kill
different
you.
from now.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's some...
But autobiographical, based, written by a man whose sister had diabetes and died in a very similar way.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the end of the movie is that when the Julia Roberts character dies, it just kind of happens. It's not manipulative. There's no teary deathbed scene where things that have never been said finally get said, blah, 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 blah. She's sick for a little while. It kind of gently leads you to this place, and then she dies.
And I appreciate that, which is another reason why I can tolerate watching it more, because, again, I will watch it. Terms of Endearment, I think I saw it twice.
Yep.
I don't ever in my whole life need to watch it again.
Yep.
Toy Story 2, I will watch again because it's a great movie. But again, what it has in common with Steel Magnolias is there is so much more to it than we're going to set this up so that you cry at the end. Yeah. And that's what I hate so much.
Well, so in Steel Magnolias, she dies, and then you get this scene at the graveyard where Sally Field is just, everyone comes over to her, and the thing that sets her off is somebody says, "How are you doing?" Mm-hmm. And basically her response is one long crying jack. "How do you think I'm doing? Right. My daughter's dead."
Right.
And
talk about chewing the wallpaper.
Sure, but it works because the waterworks come out for me every single time.
And it works in the play as well.
Yeah. Now in the play, it's interesting, and maybe one of the reasons why the movie's written this way is that she dies off stage.
She does.
And then the scene that I'm talking about is that they all return to the beauty shop in their funeral garb, and so as soon as everyone walks on stage and they're all wearing black, you know what happened.
Correct.
But in this one, because it's a movie, you have to kind of branch it out, and so you had to show that.
Well, the movie also showed men.
Yeah.
And there were no men. There are no men in the play.
Yeah. And so, and both of them, the first time I saw them made me cry. But I saw the play after I saw the movie.
Me as well.
But, this was something that it did take me by surprise because these women are so funny. And also what's good about Steel Magnolias is one of the funniest things in the entire movie happens right after you cry. At which point one of the characters actually even says laughter through tears is my favorite emotion because you're howling with laughter. There's a minute later because one of the characters can't handle how serious it's getting and so cracks a joke at the expense of another character. And they're just these bitchy Southern women. It was good writing
and good directing. In that you have this buildup of this emotional scene, which is, yes, when Julia kicks it, you do cry a bit, but you're crying because of the reaction of the characters that are still alive. Then in the next scene, when Sally's big crying jag starts, she elicits more tears because of what she is saying and what she's trying not to emote. And so it builds up. So you're there, tears streaming down your face, and then I don't know whether it's Olympia Dukakis or Shirley MacLaine. One of their characters says something.
It's Olympia.
To break the ice in the scene itself, but it also helps the audience.
Sure. Yeah.
And
and by the time you're done, you're okay. You're at peace. You don't feel abused by But
and I think the two examples, those Color Purple and Steel Magnolias, I think. Again, I didn't know on either of them what to expect when I went to go see them.
Yep.
And then by the time that you're dealing with the tears, you're invested, and I appreciate that. But on some of the stuff that comes out now, I feel very manipulated because I feel like even the purpose of a dog. I mean, are you kidding me? The poster is Dennis Quaid looking at this dog eye to eye. Then if you see any of the trailers, it's this kid, and you're like, okay, the dog must die because you can't have one dog that lives 100,000 years old.
Well, but he's reincarnated.
I understand that.
And at one point is a girl, and it's like,
why do you know so much about this?
Just because in the preview he looks at his butt and he's like, "Where are my nuts?" Like literally, this is what happens in the preview.
Okay, I didn't see that.
So there are some, But
anyway, my point being,
yes.
It's in Marley and Me. That something's gonna die and that you should take a hanky. And I don't like to know going in that I'm gonna cry. It makes me mad. So
when we come back, we're going to talk about examples from the world of television, things that made us cry there too. I had to think about this one a little harder.
Big Bang Theory makes me cry because it's so god-awful.
On that note, when we come back, TV that makes us cry.
You're listening to POPeration with Eric and Stacey. Take a deep breath. This may sting a little.
And we are back talking about stuff that makes us cry. So we talked about movies.
Yep.
And we talked about how you're okay with going to a movie that clearly wants you to cry. I, on the other hand, not so much.
Okay.
So when you go to the TV versions, what makes you cry?
Well, I was struck by my couple of examples that I pulled out for this were TV shows that should not make you cry. These are two TV shows that should not elicit tears.
Okay.
But they both had moments that I watched them and I teared up and didn't mind it. It was fine.
Right.
The first was The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Okay. I don't even know how to respond to this. I'm fascinated.
Okay. Anybody who is a big fan of the show knows the moment that I'm talking about. Right? Where in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I believe it was an episode that aired in 94, Will Smith's character, his dad, shows up. Deadbeat dad. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of like he's being reunited with his father. And dad is horrible. And basically at the end of this episode, dad tells Uncle Phil, "I'm leaving. You need to tell Will that I'm just taking off." And Uncle Phil's like, "No." And he's like, "You need to do this yourself." And the guy's like, "Well, then I'll call him from the road." And he's about to leave the house, and in comes Will with a bag packed, ready to go live with his dad. And his dad basically just drops him like a hot rock. And that's tough. But the scene after where he's talking to his Uncle Phil, And he's like, it's no big deal. It's fine. I'm okay. Right. And he's not.
Right.
And it's brilliant writing. And actually, he begins this, what I was really struck by, because I watched it again this morning just to remind myself of what happened in the scene. He starts by saying, look, it's not like I'm 5 years old, like going, where's my dad, And then he goes through this litany of all of these things that, he learned without his dad, and he's been fine without his dad, and it's actually okay. And as this is happening, his monologue is getting angrier and angrier and angrier until finally he just throws something, and then he just looks at his Uncle Phil and he says, why doesn't he want me? And there is that 5-year-old boy, right? So it starts off by saying it's not like I'm 5, and you see, oh my God, there's still a 5-year-old kid in there,
right,
who wonders why his dad doesn't want him. And in the midst of what is typically just a fun, goofy sitcom, there so many tears were shed. I can't even tell you how. And I got choked up watching it again this morning on YouTube.
And I think, yes, and that's when it's done well. That is what you want. And again, you were invested in those characters.
Yeah.
Not because you'd been watching them for an hour and a half, but because you'd been watching them over several seasons.
Sure.
But that is a testament to, yes, the writing, yes, the directing, and to Will Smith.
Yes, he is an actor. I mean,
and he was
really
even
is.
then.
Yes.
But I think that was also a testament to the viewers in that everybody can relate to that to a certain extent. Some, maybe even perfectly.
Yeah.
But certainly we've all had that kind of idea of why doesn't fill in the blank want me?
Sure.
Whether it's they want me on their team or whatever. It may not be, again, the parent, but a lot of people have had that whole parent.
Yeah, anybody has experienced rejection at some point.
And so by being able to portray that, then you're going to... But again, I think that you have to have those characters have to be... people have to be invested in them really well. Yeah. So that's good. So
my second example is actually another TV show that should not make us cry is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So right there in the title,
correct. Yes.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
But I was a fan, and I know that there were several times that I cried in that one.
Yeah. So the one that I think is the most obvious tear-jerky moment is when her mother dies.
Yes.
Right, in season 5. And what's interesting about that is that her mother had a cancer scare earlier in that season. And what she learned from that, the lesson of the day is that a vampire slayer cannot do anything about cancer.
Correct.
But then mom got better. Right. And so that was just kind of wow, I can't do everything. And we thought that we'd kind of close the chapter on that. And then out of nowhere, at the end of one episode, Buffy comes home and her mother is just dead on the couch.
Yes.
And just again, no fanfare,
nope.
No cliched deathbed speeches, just dead. Right. And the moment that a lot of fans talk about being the most, touching thing is that there's this character, Anya. And if you don't know anything about Buffy, I'll tell you a little bit about Anya. Anya was a demon. There's a lot of demons on this show, most of whom die. Anya didn't die. She was kind of turned back into a human, but she'd lived in this demon underworld for so long, she didn't really understand.
She was in her own hell because she didn't want to be a human.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like being a human without the powers that she'd had as a demon was very frustrating for her.
And so one of the things that happened to her in this episode is she didn't understand death because she was practically immortal for the longest time. And so she didn't understand the concept of somebody it's almost like when Big Bird found out that Mr. Hooper wasn't coming back, and he didn't really get it. And this is, and she gives this lovely speech that was just about how she just doesn't understand how these little mundane things are never going to happen again. But the moment that made me cry more was when Buffy went to go tell her sister that this had happened. So her sister Dawn was in art class, flirting with a boy, having this completely normal high school girl experience. And the audience knows that her mother is dead, but she does not. So she's happy and she's flirting with a guy and this is all, And then Buffy comes in and says, I need to talk to you. And the relationship between Buffy and Dawn was strained at several points during the show. And this was one of them. So she didn't want to go with her. And she came outside and the way they shot it was her friend from art class was watching it through the window. So you didn't hear any of the dialogue. You just saw this girl, Michelle Trachtenberg, who I wish was still acting because she is good. She's still in the business. She does like writing and directing now. And she just falls apart and eventually just like falls to the floor.
That's also Joss Whedon. Genius.
Yes. Yes, and knows how to shoot you because they're how do you write dialogue for that particular scene? It's such a big and it didn't matter.
He was going to hit every cliche if he tried.
But it didn't matter what was said. The point is that this girl was getting the message that her mother was gone. And it was and it was silent. There was and Joss Whedon also, his dialogue is so clever that for a moment to choose to have absolutely none of it, to just kind of that's when the tears started to flow for me. Yeah. And again, you shouldn't be crying watching a show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and yet we do. We do because you did get invested in those characters. She kicked ass so often that when she couldn't, it actually did mean something to you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they had a lot, and they had a lot of episodes that would be mostly funny or mostly action-packed.
Yep.
But this one did come out of the blue, and I think, again, no foreshadowing was a really great idea on that one. And I guess the shows that come to mind for me are kind of along the same lines. Speaking of science fiction, the show that has made me cry more than one would think is Doctor Who.
Really? Okay.
The newest incarnation, I should say.
Okay.
The old ones from the 60s and 70s can make you cry because of the fashion choices. But that's a different topic. When David Tennant, number 10.
Okay.
So Doctor Who is this Time Lord, basically immortal, in that when it's time for one incarnation of him to, quote, die or go away, or basically when that actor decides, I don't want to do the show anymore and we need to get a new actor, Doctor Who transforms, has a transformation. And David Tennant was hugely popular as the Doctor in Doctor Who, and he basically made it as huge as it is, so that then there was a number 11 and a number 12. So anyway, point being that he is getting ready to transform. And of course, we knew, because we read the papers, that he was leaving the show, that David Tennant was leaving the show. So this season was kind of leading up to it. You knew when the last episode was going to be. And yet, because you were so invested in this character, when he is there getting ready to transform, because it's this whole big lighting effects show that happens, he's there staring and looking at the people around, and he said, I don't want to leave, which was, and he's fighting back tears as well. And so there you are as a viewer going, I don't want you to leave. And I feel like, you talk about another genius of writing, Stephen Moffat. I think that's part of what he was doing, was having Doctor Who say what the audience was saying. Sure. I don't want you to leave. Those were his last words. And tears just streamed. And then he transformed, big lighting effect, yada, yada.
Who did he turn into?
He turned into Matt Smith.
Okay.
Now, I did not cry as much for Matt Smith when he left. It was sentimental, but I wasn't as invested as I was with number 10. So that was a big one for me. Again, I knew it was coming. I didn't know I'd be as affected as I was. So again, for me, if you want me to cry, it better surprise me.
Yeah.
Now, the other ones you talked about, you shouldn't, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it shouldn't have made you cry. Some of the ones these days that are doing it is when they have a very special episode. Okay. But not of the old 70s or 80s like Blossom or something like that. On Blackish and Modern Family, they've had episodes that allude to things that are going on, especially Blackish. Also Speechless, which is another very funny show. But they will have these episodes that are about something that's going on right now. Now, it's Blackish because it is about race.
Yeah.
There's a lot in the headlines about that. They've had a couple of shows that were semi-serious. They were actually talking about the race issues here in this country. And here is this family. It's not the Cosby Show, where we're talking about Theo's not getting an A kind of thing. This was talking about black men getting gunned down. And we're sitting here with this family of black people. And as someone who came from a family of white people, I never had to have this conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here watching this family having to talk with their children, having to have a conversation that I never had to have in mine and I don't have to have in mine now. And it's heartbreaking. And as they're watching, we actually at one point in one scene are watching them watch the television because news that's going on. Uh-huh. And they're having to explain to these 8 or 9-year-old twins what's going on. How do you do that? Tears streaming down my face. Is it because I'm a parent and I'm relating to if I had to have the conversation? Maybe partly. Is it because that it's even a conversation that's having to be had in 2017? Most definitely, that's part of it. But it's also because I'm invested in these characters and I'm seeing them go through a really awful, horrible thing. Painful. Mm-hmm. And I am empathizing with them.
Yeah.
But again, it's good writing. It's good acting, it's good directing, it's good everything, making me invest in these characters, like these characters, and care about what happens. Again, took me by surprise.
Yep.
Had I known that I was going to cry, I might have fast-forwarded to the mayonnaise commercial. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't because, again, I think that's catch them by surprise. That's what I think a good... not tearjerker, but if you want to catch somebody, is you hit them in the heart, mm-hmm. but do it by surprise. Don't have the sad dog eyes on the poster. Oy vey. So anyway, those are my television kind of things. But I think again, when you look at what is in common, mm-hmm. what is in common is that they may not have been made to be sappy, because there is, what's out there right now that I have not seen. I don't know that you've seen it either. This Is Us.
Every episode apparently makes you cry.
Every single person I know that has watched it loves it.
Yeah.
Stacey, you must see this.
I hear that all the time.
You'll love it.
We got a Facebook comment on our last episode saying you've got to watch This Is Us. How are you not watching the show?
Amazing. This Is Us. Okay, here's my answer. I believe I've answered it over the past 20 minutes. All right, here's the deal. When your selling point is that you're going to cry every time, nope, hard fucking pass. I will not. I don't care how good the acting is, and I love Mandy Moore. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, she's great.
I think she's always been underrated, and she's wonderful.
Whatever his name is from the Gilmore Girls, fine.
That's not my point. I'm sure it's well written. Clearly it's making people cry, so it's well written and directed and acted. But that's not why I turn on and relax on an afternoon.
And I don't mind crying. I have a much higher tolerance for the tears than you do. Oh. But I will say it's interesting to me when you look at this outline. Here's stuff that makes us cry, and I'm looking at yours, and it says Doctor Who and Blackish, and you look at mine, and it says Buffy mm-hmm. and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Right. These are where we're coming from is a little bit different.
We're not watching Parenthood. Yeah. We're not watching This Is Us. We're not watching the ones that have the sappy whatever in it that it's going to make it. I'm not watching the 30-something drama.
Now, honorable mention for stuff that makes us cry. I don't know if I cried when it happened, but I was devastated. And this was more of a drama. Was 6 Feet Under.
Okay.
And in 6 Feet Under, did you ever watch 6 Feet Under?
I don't have HBO.
Okay. So in 6 Feet Under, the gimmick was somebody died in the first 2 minutes of every single episode. Mm-hmm. Usually it was a stranger.
Right.
It was this, and they usually died in weird ways. Mm-hmm. They're just it's an odd thing. And so you weren't emotionally attached to them, but then that would be the body in the funeral home because this whole thing was about a family who ran a funeral home. Occasionally, all of a sudden the episode would start and you'd see one of the regulars and you were like, oh my God, are they going to die? And sometimes they would just be in the scene and they would witness a death mm-hmm. or sometimes, but then you'd see the name and the dates. The very first episode, the patriarch of the family dies and he spends the rest of the series as a ghost that they'll kind of talk to in flashback. The last 15 minutes, spoiler for those who have never watched 6 Feet Under, the last 15 minutes takes the show. Every living character at the end of that show, it takes them all the way to their death. Even 60 years into the future. So the young girl, Claire, we learn that she's going to die at the age of 101 with her grandchild by her side.
Okay.
But it just says, the whole point is, look, everybody's going to die.
Right.
Like every single person in this thing. And so you see people die, and you see, if there's a couple, you see who dies first, and one's at the funeral, and then a couple years later, they clutch their heart at a family picnic and they keel over. And you watched every single character die. But you couldn't say that the show was not about that and didn't do something that was deserved in that moment for that show. And they didn't all die in one big horrific accident. It wasn't Hamlet. It wasn't, the stage was not littered with bodies. And I don't know if I was just so amazed by it and also just emotionally devastated. But you also got to learn that some of these folks were going to lead nice, big, long lives, but that life comes to an end, which is something that show is always about. So that was okay with me.
Right. And it goes along with what we've already said. You were invested in those characters, so you cared. Did they live 60 years? Did they live 2? Did they have kids and all that? And so when you did get to see what their ending was, happily ever after or not, that was meaningful to you. That was profound. And I think that, again, well done, writers, directors, and actors.
Alan Ball. That was Alan Ball, and he's another genius that just he hasn't done better. Okay, so we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about some of the other stuff. We did movies, we did TV. Yep. There's other stuff.
There's other stuff that can make you cry, and that makes us cry, and we're going to talk about that when we get back.
Open wide. It's your prescribed dose of POPeration with Eric and Stacey.
Okay, so we are back now.
We're back.
And we're talking about stuff that makes us cry. We've talked about stuff in film. We've talked about certain television shows that bizarrely made us cry. But there's also other stuff. What other stuff that's made you cry?
So other stuff that makes me cry. I find that most of the time that I do most of my weeping in the popular culture.
That's a word that's not used nearly enough. Weep.
Weeping?
Weeping.
Great word.
I think it's great.
It's a great word.
Yeah.
I weep a lot at the theater. Something about things happening live on stage in front of me. And if an actor's really feeling it, and of course, you as an actor know as well as I do the old adage, if you cry, the audience doesn't have to. So when people are going through stuff in front of you and you know that they just want to let loose, or you know they're in pain and they're a good actor and you can just feel it because they are in the room with you. There's something electric there.
Well, you've forgotten that they're an actor.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're a person who is pushing against.
Although in this first example, it's hard to forget that they're actors because it's a big musical and people generally don't walk through the streets singing with a full orchestra backing them up.
Not generally.
So it's a little artificial, but the first 1,000 times I heard it, Les Miserables made me cry like a baby on my own. That little urchin girl who's in love with this man who falls in love with the rich girl, and she does this stupid thing and risks her life so that
that's an amazing song.
So On My Own is the first one that makes me cry because it's all about how she's lonely. The one that brings the mallet down is when she comes back to see him again and she gets riddled with bullets on the way and she's dying in his arms.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
I cry every time.
And what's great about that and what's not cliche about that scene is that he decides that right now what she needs is to hear me say that I love her even though I don't.
Yeah.
And so he just does that for her.
Yep.
It's just this little moment of kindness he delivers to this girl who's had a really rough life, whose parents are assholes.
Oh my gosh.
Funny assholes, but assholes. And it's just, and the music is gorgeous. And then when it's all over, there's this, the bright white light, which Les Mis did so well, that original production. Every time somebody died, they put this white kind of angelic light on them, and that's how you knew they were gone. And it really just tore me up. The other example, and this is another one kind of back to the theme of, because Les Miserables. Miserable is in the title.
So and Les for multitudes. So
multitudes of miserables.
Lots of miserables.
Lots of miserables. But the other one that I didn't know a thing about, classic of American theater, but I didn't know much about it when I went, except that there was a non-traditional set, was Our Town, right? And Our Town is a really great play. If all you know know about it is that high schools do Our Town, then you really ought to see a good production, because it really is.
Because high schools do it because there's no set.
High schools do it because there's no set. High schools do it because the script says get on 2 step ladders and pretend that they're your windows, and the high school's like, we can do that show, and it's got a huge cast, which makes it great for high schools. But at the end of the third act, spoiler for those who have not seen Our Town, and you really should. I mean, you really should see, and they have PBS versions that are on that you can see. There's, in the last act, the young woman, unexpectedly, you don't know that this is where the show is going, she dies. And you're thinking, she's the lead, what is she going to do for all of Act 3? Well, what she does is she sits in a chair, and they basically have these folding chairs that are the cemetery of Grover's Corners. And in the cemetery, there's, her grave, she's the newest person there, and they have a funeral, and she basically watches her own funeral. And then after everyone leaves, she stands up and delivers this just achingly beautiful monologue about how precious life was and how she never really appreciated what she had, the small little details that she'll never be able to experience again. And it just, oh my God, the tears just flowed and flowed and flowed. The first time. I don't know that I would cry again watching it now. I know what to expect. I would still think it was beautiful. And I would actually find it very entertaining because the writing, Thornton Wilder's writing is just amazing. So yeah, those are 2 other things that make me cry.
Okay. So here, going on the music theme, I will say there is a piece of music that it gets me every time. I have tried to analyze why, and I'm not sure. The national anthem of the United States of America.
Really?
Oh my God. Like a damn sieve. It is ridiculous. The Olympics are especially bad. Because
so when an American wins and you hear the national anthem,
I am crying along with them. I am crying along with them. Now, I do know that when it's not live, you don't have to stand. So Stacey's not standing all the damn time, but there is something about it that is very affecting. I consider myself a very patriotic person. And you start the national anthem and Stacey turns on the waterworks and it just affects me. And then there is, the words. And I'm sitting here talking about it. I can feel in the back of my throat. I'm sitting here going, I'm not going to burst into tears during this. This is just ridiculous. But the words are compelling to me, and the music, everything, Yeah. And it's that whole.
I have to tell you, I've always been impressed by the fact that our national anthem basically told a story. And if you think about it, it tells a story of a young soldier who is, living through a battle, wondering if the flag is still going to be there the next morning.
It's about hope. Yeah, and it really is. And I think that's part of why it touches me is that, oh my gosh, I can feel it again. The flag is still there. Yeah. That's the flag was still there.
Yeah. My mom has a similar thing, except for her, it's the hymn of the battle hymn of the naval. Do that one. And when the words are about, God bless those that we've lost. And, my dad's still with us, naval officer. We grew up in a Navy family. But I think that my mom, when she hears that, she's just kind of reminded of saying goodbye to her husband. And he's going to be on a boat for 6 months and we might get 2 phone calls in that 6 months time. And he is, we were never at wartime, but he was wearing the uniform and we would have, if their war broke out, the ship would have gone right there.
Well, it's funny that you say, and I'm just going to throw this one in, I don't want to necessarily talk about this, but from World War II, I'll Be Seeing You, that song can also do it for me. Yeah. Because of what it was written about. Yes. And so I've tried to analyze exactly where this came from. I don't know when it started, but I'll tell you right now, I could boo-hoo the hell out of National Anthem. But another thing, and it used to be that certain commercials, and it used to be all Hallmark, because Hallmark used to make some really good
They were good at that. That and Folgers made some good.
Folgers did some good ones as well. You're right. I forgot about them. But Hallmark used to really do some good ones. And around like Father's Day or Mother's Day, they'd come out with the really sappy ones.
But they'd work. They'd be well done. Well done.
Now, who's good now? And some of this is because I am a parent, and I am a parent of a teenager, and is the Subaru commercials right now. It's a lot about parents teaching their kids to drive. And there's one commercial, I don't think it's running right now, but it was one of the first that were going through this, where this father is talking to his daughter, and he's talking to her about driving, and you see him, and then the camera goes to inside the car, and it's this teenage girl. Then you go, and she goes blah blah blah, and the father says, "Well, I want you to be careful," yada yada. So it's back to a close up of him. Then you go back to the car, and you see what he sees, and it's this like 7-year-old girl behind the wheel of a car, and I'm like. And so anything, and Father of the Bride with Steve Martin back in the day, that one also, that's catnip. The father-daughter relationship stuff, that will knock me out, because I had a really good relationship with my father.
Yeah, you still talk about that a lot.
And so anytime that there is that where the father is looking at the daughter who is older, but what he's seeing is the little girl, from 10 years ago, I'm out. Checked out. I'm done. Stacey's out. She's, poked me with a fork. I will tell you this quick little story about car commercials and me crying. It's right up there with the E.T. story. Now, I usually try to veer away from stories that start out one time when I was pregnant, because when anybody else starts the story that way, again, my brain checks out. So I don't like to do that to people. So one time when I was pregnant, I guess I had to be about 8 months.
Okay. First pregnancy or
first
second?
Pregnancy.
First pregnancy.
And usually, just an FYI, pregnancies last about 9 months. So understand I was very
Spoiler.
I was very far along. So my husband and I, we were in our house, and he was in one room watching sports or whatever, and I was in our bedroom. I was laying down and just relaxing, and I was watching something else on the TV in there. And a commercial came on, and this is what my husband heard. And he rushed into the bedroom, and he said, "What's wrong?
You're in labor."
Oh, yeah, exactly. Did the water break? What's going on? Oh, my gosh. Frank was panicked. And I'm just, and I can't talk. Okay? But I'm pointing at the television. Now, keep in mind that this was before DVRs, or at least we didn't have one. So I don't think I could pause the television yet. So whatever was on the television is gone. And I'm just pointing at it. And Frank's like, "What? Wait, what? What? Are you okay?" And I said, yes, but on the TV. And he's like, "What? Wait, okay, wait. There was something on the TV." Yes. And this is, I'm going to tell the story as I told him, and then I will translate. As soon as the dog, as soon as it wet, and they were dressed up, and they come out, and the dog was okay. All right. That's what Frank heard. It was a commercial for Land Rover, the car. The storyline was that this couple was dressed to the nines in their Land Rover. Are you crying right now?
This is so funny.
They're dressed to the nines in their nice new Land Rover. It is a raining, awful night. They're clearly going out, celebrating. They're in a great mood, but it's just torrential downpour. They're on the highway, and they're coming up, and there's a median, and then in the median between the two, it's 4 lanes of traffic on both sides, and just lots of traffic. And in the median, and this torrential downpour, is this dog. I think the dog's name was Marley. It looks like Marley. And the dog wants to cross the street, but he can't, because there's all the traffic. And he's shivering, and his hair is just stuck to his body, and he's cold because it's raining. They got out of their car in their beautiful gown and tuxedo. They got drenched, and they got the dog, and they took the dog, God knows where, I don't know, at the end of the commercial. But my thing was, they saved the dog.
They saved the dog.
But the dog is what made me cry, because he was in the median. And he couldn't get across the street. Did I say it was nighttime? Had I told you that part?
Yes, you did.
And he just stood there shivering and desperately wanting to get across. It was awful. So that is what made me cry. But I will say this. My husband still likes Land Rover commercials just for that. So did that make you cry, Stacey? Did that make you cry? No, it doesn't make me cry anymore. Anyway. But we haven't seen that commercial. That commercial might make me cry again. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
but that was fun.
Let's see if we can find it. Let's just look at Land Rover. And when were you pregnant? So how old is it?
It's 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, 2000.
All right. Well, look.
But here's the thing also. I just want to say I am an ugly crier.
Yeah.
I am an awful, awful ugly crier. So
Which
it's
so
not
many
pretty.
people cry so beautifully.
Some do.
And yeah, some know how to just, and it's always that kind of the one gentle tear.
Oh, wasn't it Meryl Streep that somebody said, "I want you to cry," and she said, "Which cheek?"
Which
eye?
No, that was,
who was that?
Laurence Olivier, I think, said, which
No, this is a girl. I think this was, maybe it's attributed to Meryl Streep by somebody else. I heard the story, but it was really Lawrence, because Lawrence is also the one who told Dustin Hoffman just to act.
Yeah. We don't want a single solitary tear.
Yeah.
He's like, right or left eye.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, that the cliche is that people who cry do so beautifully on screen. There are some good ugly criers, though, out there.
I tell you that I think the British do it the best because they just don't care. They don't care how they look. I think Americans, we tend to want pretty criers, and so we like our girls to cry pretty. The Brits don't care.
Well, Viola Davis does a really good ugly cry in Fences. Really good ugly cry.
Oh, I have seen that.
Yeah,
yes.
But who's the best? The best of the best of the best, and you're right, British. Juliet Stevenson. From Truly Madly Deeply.
Yes.
Do you remember her?
Yes.
And it's at the beginning of the movie. So you're not
lots of snot.
Lots of snot.
See, even now I remember it was a lot of snot. But they do this a lot. The Brits don't care about snot.
Yeah. And it's also the beginning of the movie. So she wasn't trying to manipulate anybody. It wasn't this,
No. It was,
we were just setting her up as a grieving widow.
She was very grieving.
And this is before Alan Rickman, who we all grieve for now.
Don't even make me cry about that.
Shows up then as the ghost of her late husband, and they spend the rest of the movie dealing with the fact that she needs to get over him. But yeah, the very beginning of that movie, the very first thing you see her do is just cry with all the snot and the tears and the dripping down her nose,
and she didn't care, and that was the whole point. She didn't care. This was about grief, and you got that because it wasn't pretty.
Whatever happened to her? She was brilliant.
She still does stuff every once in a while.
I haven't seen her in a long time.
Gwyneth Paltrow's Emma, I remember that.
Oh,
and
right.
then every once in a while she'll show up. She may be in Midsummer this season. I don't. Midsummer Murders this season. I don't know. I'll let you know.
Please do.
Oh, Yvette. So anyway, that's stuff that makes her cry.
Final diagnosis about crying at stuff.
Here's mine. I'm never going to go for entertainment that I know is going to make me cry. I'm never going to go there willingly. But I accept that I may cry sometimes because I will be touched because I care so much about whatever's happening.
Yeah.
Seriously, that dog was wet. But I do think that sometimes those things, that kind of entertainment, people like it because they like the release.
Yeah.
And so I think it's valid. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. So here's what I learned today. I learned something very valuable and important today, Stacey.
I'm listening.
And we're not that far apart, really. We're not, because I also get mad when I feel like someone's just jerking my chain. If I feel like someone's pulling my strings and just saying, now you will cry, then I'm like, no, I will not.
Correct.
But if you get me at a moment where all of a sudden these people, like, Will in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or Buffy, who you usually see in this other light, and you see that there's this whole side to their humanity.
Correct.
That, and it's okay that we show something. And, Buffy had to learn at some point that she can't slay cancer.
Correct.
And so that was just one way of her growth and that kind of coming of age thing. She had to learn that lesson, and we had to learn it with her.
Yes.
And it was well done. And I don't mind shedding a few tears if I feel like they're earned. If you earn those tears, then it's okay. Then it's okay. Then it's absolutely fine. Yeah. Good writing, good directing, good acting.
Correct.
I'm there.
Yep.
Sophie's Choice, never again.
Never again. Once was enough.
Okay.
Once was enough.
We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to POPeration with Eric and Stacey. Check out our website at POPerationRoom.com for links to our blog and other extras. Don't forget to subscribe to POPeration via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and other podcast locations. You can also follow @POPeration Room on Facebook and Twitter. Music provided by PurplePlanet.com.